Hello everyone and welcome back to your channel Lawpedia. So in this particular video, we'll be covering the topic abetment, and this is the part 2 of your video. If you haven't watched the part 1, I would request you to first go and watch that particular video, because in that video we covered section 107 and 108, which are the basic sections of abetment you need to understand before you are covering sections 109 to 120 of the Indian Penal Code. And the sections 109 to 120 basically prescribe the principles for assessing the extent of punishment liable to be imposed on various abettors. So let's quickly get started with the video, and the first section is section 109. So your section 109 basically deals with punishment of abetment if the act abetted is committed in consequence and where no express provision is made for its punishment. The provision states that whoever abets an offence, if the act abetted is committed in consequence of the abetment and no express provision is made for the punishment of such abetment, such person shall be punished with the punishment provided for that particular offense. Now let's understand. This section basically states that whenever a person abets any offense, firstly, and if the act abetted is finally committed in consequence of the abetment, and thirdly, there is no express provision made by this code. Now what do you understand by that? That means कि कोड में, इंडियन पीनल कोड में ऐसा कोई भी अलग से प्रोविजन नहीं है प्रोवाइडिंग फॉर द पनिशमेंट ऑफ द सेम, देन दैट पर्टिकुलर पर्सन विल बी पनिश्ड विद द सेम ऑफेंस प्रोवाइडेड इन द कोड. When is the act said to be committed in consequence of abetment? And that's the explanation to the section. An act or an offense is said to be committed in consequence of abetment when it is committed in consequence of the instigation, pursuance of conspiracy, or with the aid which constitutes the abetment. So these are the three components that we have already understood in our previous video that comprise abetment. So whenever you will have these three things and the act is committed in consequence of that, the act is said to be committed in consequence of the particular abetment. Now let's understand with the help of an example. Let's say A offers bribe to a public servant who is B, and as a reward for showing some files to A, and B accepts the bribe. Okay, so A has abetted the offense defined under section 161 of the Indian Penal Code in this particular case. Another example, let's say A instigates B to give false evidence. A instigate करता है B को to give false evidence. B, in consequence of the instigation, commits that offense. Here, A is guilty of abetting that offense and is liable for same punishment as B. So now, I hope with these two examples, you are absolutely clear with what is section 109. Now the next sections that we'll be understanding are sections 110 and 111. Section 110 basically talks about punishment of the abetment if the person abetted does the act with a different intention from that of the abetter. Let's read the section. Section states, whoever abets the commission of an offense shall, if the person abetted does the act with the different intention or knowledge from that of the abetter, be punished with punishment provided for the offense which would have been committed if the act had been done with the intention or knowledge of the abetter and with no other. Let's understand with a very simple example. A orders B to kill C and B kills him because he has his own, intentions to kill C. So यहाँ पे क्या होगा? A will be liable to the extent as if the B's act of killing C was actually due to the own intentions of A. The crux of the section is, it basically provides that it does not matter whether the person abetted had the necessary intention or knowledge, so long as the act is committed in consequence of the abetment. Then the abetter shall be held liable as he himself committed the act with intention and knowledge. Section 111 basically talks about liability of the abettor when one act abetted and the different act is done. What is the liability of the abettor when one act is abetted but the other act is done? यहाँ पे we'll be understanding principles of probable consequences. So this section basically talks about when an act is abetted and a different act is done, the abettor is liable for the act done in the same manner and to the same extent as if he directly abetted it. Let's understand this with the help of an example. Let's say A instigate करता है B को to burn Z's house. B sets fire to the house and at the same time commits theft of property there. So, what happens in this case is A, though guilty of abetting the burning of the house, is not guilty of abetting the theft. Why? Because for theft was a distinct act and was not a probable consequence of burning. So, the principle of probable consequences basically states that every man is presumed to intend the natural and probable cause of his act. So let's say I am committing a particular act. So I will be very much aware about what will be the consequences of the act. So if a person commits an act and so consequences will definitely follow the act the person is committing, he will be liable for the abetment of the same. However, if a person is committing an act and there are some different consequences as well which are happening because of some other person or the principal offender, the abettor will not be held liable for that particular act. So, if the result is a natural and probable consequence of the act which is likely or which can reasonably be expected to follow from such act, the abettor is liable for the act committed. Now let's move forward to another very important concept, which is your 4 dimensions of law of abetment. So यहाँ पे I have basically stated what are the 4 factors that you must be aware of when you are judging about whether the offense of abetment has been done or not. So firstly, the act abetted, whether the act abetted has been done in the consequence of abetment or not, and what is the whole scenario regarding the same. Secondly, the intention of the act done. Though intention is not very important in case of offense of abetment, you must be aware about the same. Thirdly, the abettor, what is the state of mind of the abettor, and lastly, the principal offender. Let's move forward and understand our sections 112 to 114, which are pretty simple sections. So, section 112 basically talks about abettor when liable for cumulative punishment for the act abetted and for the act done. Now, this is related to your section 111. The section 112 basically reads, if the act for which the abettor is liable under the last preceding section is committed in addition to the act abetted and constitutes a distinct offence, the abettor is liable to the punishment of each of the offence. Section 112 जो है is basically an extension of section 111. So ये क्या कहता है? Let's say the person would have been liable for X offense. So the section 112 basically states that now the person will be liable for Y offense also, which has been committed in consequence of the same abetment and also due to the fact which was a probable consequence of the abetment itself. Let's say A instigates B to resist by force a distress made by a public servant. B, in consequence of the same, resists that distress, and while offering resistance, B causes grievous hurt to the officer executing the duty. So यहाँ पे क्या हुआ है? B has committed both the offense of resisting the distress as well as the offense of causing grievous hurt. B is liable to be punished for both these offenses. And if A knew that B was likely to cause this particular grievous hurt in resisting the distress, A will also be liable for each of the offenses. So I hope you understood section 111, extension of which is section 112. Now let's move to section 113, which basically talks about liability of abettor for an effect caused by the act abetted different from that intended by the abettor. So section 113 basically considers when the act is the same as the act abetted but with a different effect. Okay, so the effect जो cause हुआ है is different. Let's understand this with the help of an example. Let's say A instigates B to cause grievous hurt to Z, and B in consequence of the instigation causes the grievous hurt to Z, and Z dies in consequence of the same. यहाँ पे if A knew that the grievous hurt abetted was likely to cause death, A will be liable with the punishment provided for murder. Quickly moving on to section 114, which basically talks about abettor present when the offence is committed. Three broad ingredients of section 114. Firstly, abetment is prior to the commission of offence. Second, abetment must be complete. And third, abettor must be present at the time of the commission of the act. Fulfill these three ingredients and the section provides that abettor shall be deemed to be liable for the punishment as if he had himself committed the offence. So basically the section wants to say that actual presence plus prior abetment of the same can mean nothing but prior participation as well as committing the act by the same person itself, and the code states that you'll be held liable for the same punishment as the principal offender. Let's move forward and quickly finish our video understanding our 5 other sections when we are understanding the offence of abetment. Now, firstly, we need to see section 115, which basically talks about abetment of offence punishable with death or imprisonment for life if the offence has not been committed. यहाँ पे the important term is the offence has not been committed. So whatever the abetment was about or whatever the planning was going on, that particular offence has not been committed. Whoever abets the commission of an offence punishable with death or imprisonment for life shall, if the offence has not been committed in consequence of the abetment, and no express provision is made by this code for the punishment of such abetment, be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 7 years and shall also be liable for fine. So the period of imprisonment is 7 years. Now let's move to section 116, which basically talks about abetment of offence punishable with imprisonment if the offence has not been committed. So term of punishment क्या है in section 116? It's 1/4 the maximum term of punishment prescribed for that offence. Let's say the maximum punishment is 16 years. So 1/4 of that means 4 years would be the maximum punishment in case of your section 116. Now your section 117 talks about abetting the commission of an offence by public or by more than 10 persons. So what is the term of punishment in section 117? It's 3 years. So I hope you understood the sections 115, 16 and 17, basic sections prescribing punishment of abettor in different scenarios. Let's move forward and understand our last sections while we are dealing with abetment. So now we are understanding sections 118 to 120, जो कि basically deal करते हैं with your concealment prior to the commission of crime. So these sections will have two aspects. First is the criminal design on the part of person. Let's say I am the person. First is my criminal design, which I am intending to commit. And secondly is concealment by the another of the design to commit the offence. So these sections will generally be applicable to a person who have an obligation or a legal duty to disclose knowledge of the intention to commit the crime. Section 118 basically talks about concealing design to commit offence punishable with death or imprisonment for life. So basically the section states that whoever intending to facilitate or knowing that it will be likely to facilitate the commission of an offence punishable with death or imprisonment for life, if the offence is committed, be punished with either a description for a term which may extend to 7 years, or if the offence has not been committed, the imprisonment is for a maximum period of 3 years. Now your section 119 basically talks about public servant concealing design to commit offence, which it is his duty to prevent. Now in this particular case, again, whoever being a public servant, let's say A being a public servant intending to facilitate or knowing it to be likely that he will thereby facilitate the commission of an offence, which is his duty to prevent as a public servant, and if such offence is committed, he shall be liable to the extent of 1/2 of the longest term of such imprisonment. If the offence be punishable with death, the person will be held liable with imprisonment, which makes 10 to 10 years, and if the offence is not committed, then the person shall be punished with imprisonment of any description provided for the offence for a term which makes 10 to 1/4 of the longest term of such imprisonment. Now lastly, moving to your section 120, which basically deals with concealing design to commit offence punishable with imprisonment. So 118, death or imprisonment for life, 119, done by a public servant, and 120, concealing design to commit the offence for which an express punishment is provided. So what happens in this case? If the act is committed, the person shall be held liable to the extent of 1/4 of the maximum imprisonment, and if the offence is not committed, the person will be held liable to 1/8 of the longest term of such imprisonment. So I hope आपको section 118, 19 and 20 absolutely clear है. Basically prescribing punishment for abettors and to what extent they can be held liable depending on the extent of the crime committed by them. So that's it for today's video, and that covers your topic of abetment as stated in your Indian Penal Code 1860. I hope after watching the part 1 video and part 2 video, the offence of abetment is absolutely clear to you. Please do like, share and subscribe if you're understanding the content. It helps me understand as well that yes, the explanations and the content is going in the right direction. Till then, I hope you all stay safe, stay home and keep learning.